ちゃろかったけど、このおっさん、重すぎだって。
When it comes to action anime, there's almost too many shows to watch. From adaptations of long-running shonen manga to anime original works, there's a whole spectrum of battle anime that can fit every taste. But through the history of the entire medium, one work stands out to me as the true king of these brawl-filled beatdowns. And I'm here to give it some big love on its 20th anniversary. I'm talking about the ultimate rival story, the legendary 2001 Sunrise production, Scryed. Scryed is without question my all-time favorite pure action anime. One of the defining series of the early 2000s, that aside from a very successful original run in 2001 in Japan, would become a bit of a cult classic in America, due to its 12:30 AM dubbed run on Adult Swim in 2005. Scryed still remains the gold standard for action shows to strive for, weaving together one of the most well-executed and brilliantly planned out tales of rivalry to grace storytelling. 22 years ago, an apocalyptic seismic shift caused the Kanagawa prefecture of Japan to be separated from the rest of the country. This newly created island would become its own micronation, the Lost Ground. Mysteriously, 1% of children born on the Lost Ground within the following years would possess the ability to take any existing matter and convert it into a weaponized state. These gifted individuals would be known as alters. Over the following 22 years, the Lost Ground would be split into two worlds of its own, the Miraji Economic District, an advanced walled-off city on the coast of the Lost Ground directly funded by the Japanese or mainland government, and the violent wasteland that the rest of the Lost Ground had become. With crimes committed by powerful altar users on the rise, a counter-terrorist police force called Holy, made up of the strongest altars on the Lost Ground, would form, to forcefully create some order on the island. On one fateful day, one of Holy's top officers, Ryuho Ryu, would come across the wild mercenary Kazuma. The rivalry that would soon form between these two would be the catalyst for an era of change on the Lost Ground. Scryed is the brainchild of three huge anime industry names: director and animator Goro Taniguchi, who's had an absurdly strong career from directing classics such as Code Geass, Gun X Sword, Planetes, and many more. Writer Yosuke Kuroda, known for his work writing the Trigun, Tenshi Muyo, and My Hero Academia anime adaptations, as well as some original series like Gundam 00. And character designer and animator Hisashi Hirai, who has one of the most distinct and easily recognizable styles of any character designer. Previously, this power trio had worked together on 1999's Infinite Revias. The first series that Taniguchi would serve as lead director on, having previously worked as an episode director on other Sunrise series such as G Gundam. Infinite Revias is essentially Lord of the Flies in space, just with far more teenage angst and romance. It's a fantastic show in its own right, but its production would serve as the inspiration for Scryed. Halfway through the TV run of Revias, Taniguchi was hit with an idea to create the perfect series to usher in the new century. An action series about how people's life experiences shape their worldviews, and how new experiences can cause a shift in said views. While Infinite Revias focused on a general population's responses to ever-changing forms of government, and how those who try to bring change can end up overcompensating while trying to fully satisfy either individual or collective needs, Scryed was intended to be set during one specific period of divide: the inners who live outside of the city, and the city dwellers who live in luxury behind the walls, backed by mainland support. This idea is applied directly to the two lead characters, through the specific ideas that Kazuma and Ryuho represent: nature and order respectively. Kazuma is quite literally a force of nature that can't be stopped. He's wild and completely free, living life for the moment and facing any challenges that come his way head on. His existence is a shock to the system. He's powerful enough to defeat any troops that Holy throws his way, but at the end of the day he's still just a dude trying to make some money. As long as his home isn't attacked directly, he could really care less about who he's fighting. The man will throw hands on sight if it nets him a couple dollars to scrape by. The only restraint Kazuma ever shows is around his two closest friends: Kimishima, who serves as Kazuma's handler, informing him of any mercenary work that's popped up around the wasteland, and Kaname Yuta, a young girl who lives with Kazuma, and basically acts as a surrogate caretaker for this grown-ass man. The first 10 episodes of the series mostly follow Kazuma as he takes on increasingly challenging battles against different members of Holy, essentially taking on the structure of a fight of the week, but less rigid than that might sound. His battle with Holy Officer Tachibana ends with the two coming to a common understanding, with Kazuma inadvertently teaching him how to look at his life through a different lens, really asking Tachibana what he wants in life and why he's a member of Holy to begin with. Kazuma shows no fear in any situation that comes his way. He fights with conviction that his free-flow, independent way of life is the right path for him. This view stems from his alter power, a metallic fist that he can summon upon his arm to deliver 3 devastating punches. The shocking first bullet.
Now it's shocking first bullet!
The annihilating second bullet.
撃滅のセカンドブリッザー
And the exterminating last bullet.
Exterminating last bullet!
His alter and its power isn't the only reason for his headstrong beliefs. He grew up in an endlessly rough environment where he was treated like a dangerous weapon, developing the idea that his fist is his greatest attribute, the ultimate tool to break down those who harm his way of life. It's the combination of the power that his alter gives him and his early life experiences that perfectly explain his outlook on the world. To contrast Kazuma, you have the series' incredible rival character and secondary protagonist, Ryuho. The heir to the wealthy and influential Ryu family, Ryuho rejected the silver spoon he was born with to pursue a life of law and order after his mother and dog were murdered by a mysterious powerful ultra user. Ryuho believes that no individual should have opportunities to harm the weak. His view is that he needs to be the one to bring order to the world, stripping it of chaos and eliminating all conflict. Of course, with this aggressively idealistic view set comes the inherent hypocrisy of him being a brutal officer of the law who pulls no punches. When he first meets Kazuma, he believes him to be the scum of the earth, a violent, unhinged man who just lives for the hell of it, with no sense of allegiance or order. The burning hatred he develops for Kazuma sets him on a scorched earth path to lock up as many alter criminals as possible, all while gunning for his polar opposite. Blessed with a humanoid alter called Zetsui, Ryuho is fast as hell and extremely powerful, being able to quickly slice through anything that comes in between him and his pursuit of justice. He's an arrogant asshole who's too clouded by his sense of justice to step back and see the corruption bubbling in the organization he's sworn loyalty to. And his aggressive, no-nonsense approach to life creates strain on his relationships, whether that be with his partner Charisse, the other members of Holy, and his childhood friend and top alter researcher Mimori Kiryu. While Kazuma fights many other members of Holy, it always comes back to his conflict with Ryuho. The two of them could not be more different. But at the same time, as the series does a solid job cluing you in on, they are far more similar than their past and occupations may let on. These are two men driven purely by conviction. And that right there is the main theme of Scryed. What drives a man to live his life the way he does, and the events that caused these views and spurred these men to action. But Kazuma and Ryuho are not static. Their conflict and the effect it has on the people around them leaves a massive impact on both of them, as they stay true to themselves while steadily adopting traits from each other during all of their fights. And this is only in the series' first half. It's only in the series' phenomenal second act, where the central threat that forces the two factions to come together is introduced, that the extreme effects that their actions have had really come into some incredibly satisfying payoff. All culminating in what I consider to be one of, if not the greatest final episodes in any anime. To not get fully into spoiler territory, let's just say that every other rival story in existence will pale in comparison to Scryed's once you wrap up this 26-episode journey. Scryed is really the story of headstrong men learning to better themselves through shared experiences, whether that be fighting, just sitting down to have a conversation, or recalling their past. While Ryuho and Kazuma learn from each other throughout the series, there's a third alter user who strikes the perfect balance between the two's lifestyle of nature and order. Straight Cougar. Cougar is the fan favorite character from the series for very good reason. The man is a riot, living life with the philosophy of speed before all else.
The answers to all the problems that face mankind lie in speed. If you could do something fast, it gives you that much more time to finish your next task. Anyone can do it slowly. If you spend 20 years, even a fool can write a best-selling novel. The weekly cartoon artist is smarter than the monthly one, and the daily one is even smarter than the weekly. So the cultural law of nature indicates that speed means talent, and that's my philosophy. Yeah!
Cougar carries himself with the free spirit of Kazuma while working towards bettering the world and uplifting those around him a la Ryuho. Also, he's off his rocker and totally hilarious, providing some much needed humor to any scene he's in. Aside from Cougar, the rest of the cast is also quite strong. From Holy Officer Charisse Ajiani, whose connection with Ryuho drives her to better both herself and him, going full, guys, trust me, I can fix him. But after she finally starts to come to terms with how distant Ryuho can be, she adjusts how she carries herself, becoming more independent, and taking on actions out of her own drive as opposed to just being some weird sidekick. Mimori Kiryu is the only member of Holy with no alter. Part of one of the mainland's most wealthy families, her presence on the lost ground creates a mounting tension within both Holy and the mainland government. If anything were to happen to her, all hell would break loose. But through her own intuition and smarts, she finds herself serving as a bridge between Kazuma and Ryuho's worlds. The other central character I'd like to discuss in some specific detail is Kanami Yuta. Kanami is in many ways the show's audience insert. She harbors a deep adoration for Kazuma. Hell, her adoration is basically a full-on crush. Kazuma's treatment of her as an adopted little sister prevents their dynamic from ever feeling creepy or romantic, which goes a long way as presenting their dynamic as very familial. Kanami also plays the role of the series' semi-narrator, recapping and commentating on key moments through her strange dreams. Aside from the key cast members, other standouts are Kazuma's ride-or-die homie Kimishima, who always comes in clutch even if he has no alter to speak of, to Holy Commander Martin Zigmarl, whose calm, calculated approach to tackling the alter crime rate really emphasizes that this man means serious business. All of the other Holy members are solid characters in their own right, such as the aforementioned Tachibana, and the awesome duo of Urizan and Ilian. The one-off villains that spring up from time to time are also wonderfully over the top, and provide for some comical but very engaging fights. From dudes who way overcompensate, to a total mecha nerd, to a literal incel, Scryed knows how to have fun even when not focused on its main cast. Beyond its characters and narrative though, Scryed is a beast on the visual front too, with one small, very easy to forgive caveat. Hisashi Hirai's character designs are fantastic, and Scryed features some of his most distinct and striking designs. The rest of the art direction is also spectacular. The city has an imposing presence with its sprawling skyscrapers and lengthy highways, especially compared to the rest of the Lost Ground, with its dry, desolate rock formations only cut through by the occasional rundown towns and farms. The world of Scryed feels very tangible. Thanks in part to the series' excellent art director Akira Suzuki, Koji Ito's mechanical design from some of the series' alter powers to the equipment used by Holy also features fantastic visual variety and some really colorful work, both literally and figuratively. The animation throughout is also exceptionally smooth, carrying just the correct amount of weight during battles, and providing plenty of nice subtle touches for character animation. This animation team was full of some of the most skilled individuals at Sunrise, and it shows. So if everybody in the show's art department knocked it out of the park, what's the issue? Well, Scryed came out in 2001, and was a pretty early Digipaint show that played around with a lot of visual effects. While obviously not the first show to do this, particularly if we're talking Sunrise-produced anime, Hirai's character designs mixed with this digital color on occasion make the show look a bit melted, for lack of a better word. The series has very strong digital coloring, of course, and it looks far better and more vibrant than most early Digipaint shows. But on occasion, lines and colors seem to just bleed into each other, giving for an almost puddle-like look to some shots. This thankfully isn't very common, but it is the one noticeable issue with the series' visuals. The digital effects that the series implements range from pretty well applied to just outright hilarious. There are some borderline Adobe Premiere shitpost energy edits in this show, and it honestly adds a unique, very of its era layer to its visual identity. The music in Scryed is also phenomenal. Kotaro Nakagawa is a mainstay when it comes to Goro Taniguchi directed shows, and his initial work with the famed director started here on Scryed, where he brings a unique Latin jazz hybrid soundscape to the series, punctuating every key moment with some incredible earworms, and some of my favorite stingers in any anime soundtrack. The opening theme, Reckless Fire, performed by Yasuake-Ide, is also easily in my top 3 favorite openings of all time. Hell, it might even be my favorite. Reckless Fire isn't just a banger song, it's also a visually excellent opening that makes at least one minor change per episode. Yeah, you heard that right, this opening makes adjustments per episode. Some changes are far more subtle than others, but it's still an impressive effort. The opening also cycles through all 3 of its verses depending on who the central character of the episode is. If it's a Kazuma-centric episode, the first verse is used. Ryuho gets the second verse, and both of the leads being the focus of an episode makes way for the third verse. It's a brilliant opening that's used in a unique way I've seen no other show really do. The ending theme, Drastic My Soul, performed by Mikio Sakai, is also fantastic, and hits extra strong at the end of an episode. Sakai would also perform all of the show's insert songs, which also go hard. Scryed's sound design is top-notch. Making great use of many of Sunrise iconic stock effects, the show has that classic Sunrise flair where everything has a nice punch. Yasuo Uragami, who's a longtime Sunrise legend, served as the sound director on the series. So it's obviously very good. Also, that eye catch? On the other audio front is the voice acting. The series would air on Adult Swim in 2005, with a fantastic English dub that quite honestly rivals the original Japanese audio in quality. Soichiro Hoshi is phenomenal as Kazuma, with vicious, precise delivery that really brings into focus his wild nature. But Steve Blum puts on what I honestly think is the best performance of his career as Kazuma in the dub, matching Hoshi's energy while also being the least Steve Blum sounding role Steve Blum has ever done. The rest of the cast in both Japanese and English also kill it. From Hikaru Midorikawa and Jason Spacek's excellent work as Ryuho, even if Spacek takes a couple episodes to really, get into the groove of things, but he's good later on. He's good later in the show. To Kiyosuke Tsukui and Crispin Freeman as Straight Cougar. Scryed is one of those cases of a great show where you can't go wrong with either audio track. The delivery is intentionally cheesy when it needs to be in both languages, and the translation itself is really spot on.
What the? Impossible! My balls aren't there!
What's wrong? You can't find your little balls? I've got them right here.
Can't be.
ホーリーも粋なことっすよね。
みのりさん
三森です。
すみませんですがこいつは野生というか野獣というか
行こうぜ。
うわーオブストラクション
The only issue I have with the dub is Laura Jill Miller as Charisse. She starts off sounding pretty rough in the role, but does improve over time and sounds as good as everyone else by the time we've hit the end of the series. This isn't really her fault though, as Masayo Kurata's performance in the role is extremely strong, and Charisse does do a ton of talking, so it's not exactly the easiest role in the show. Scryed just rocks. It's not often that a show can flawlessly execute all of its ideas and themes with time to spare, but Scryed does that and so much more. The series is still celebrated to this day 20 years after its initial run in Japan for good reason. It's a hallmark action series that helped usher in the early 2000s era itself. There's 3 other major pieces of Scryed related content. The first is a manga series that began its run halfway into the anime's initial run. Written once again by Yosuke Kuroda and illustrated by Yasunari Toda, who worked on the Gundam Seed Astray and recent Giant Robo manga. The manga is pretty bad, but it's also so buck wild that it almost makes up for its lack of quality in its sheer vomit of ideas. The manga shares very little in common with the anime outside of character names, which are also in some cases changed here. It also features plenty of manga original characters who are pretty flat and lacking, and don't have the staying power that the anime's cast does. The series is also just too fast for its own good, running for only 5 volumes, and switching lanes so many times that it would make Tatsuki Fujimoto blush. I wouldn't suggest reading the manga in place of the anime, but as a work of supplementary material, it's a wild, if a bit weak, alternate version of the series. In 2011, for Scryed's 10th anniversary, 2 compilation films were released. Scryed Alteration Tau and Scryed Alteration Quan. These recap movies are about what you would expect. They speed through the plot of the anime, cutting many of my favorite slower moments, and filling in any gaps that absence creates with new animation. The issue the movies run into, like most compilation films, is that any of the new movie exclusive footage sticks out like a sore thumb, with its fancy 16:9 HD resolution, whereas the show was 4:3, meaning that all the footage has been zoomed in a nasty way to fit that 16:9 ratio. The new animation in the movie is very good when it shows up, but between the 2 films it only clocks in at about 25 minutes, in a total of a 3-hour runtime. These new sequences include a few admittedly very cool new fights, 2 new characters, and a change to the series' fantastic finale that I'm not personally very fond of. Again, as recap movies, these are good for people who enjoy the show and want to experience a slightly different truncated version of it, but it's no replacement for just watching the series itself. The third and frankly most bizarre piece of post-anime content is the light novel Scryed After. It's exactly what it sounds like, but Hirai was the only original staff member who worked on the novel, with its story being written by Kazuyo Hiyoda. It's also untranslated and not super easy to find, but based on the common opinion I've read on it, it's better left ignored to begin with. Scryed is available on Blu-ray from Discotek. This release is definitely the optimal way to watch the series, as the masters used on the Blu-ray are fantastic. But if you don't feel like spending the money to watch the show, all 26 episodes both subbed and dubbed are available on Crunchyroll for free in HD. The manga is long out of print, as it was released by the now defunct Tokyo Pop, and the recap movies and light novel have never had any sort of officially translated release. You will not regret watching Scryed. It's a show that not only holds up today, but still stands its ground firmly as one of the greatest anime original action series to ever release. Goro Taniguchi's lengthy career as a phenomenal director may have started with the already great Infinite Revias, but it was Scryed that became the series that would fully define his kinetic, instantly recognizable style. And in my opinion, Scryed is still the best work that Taniguchi, Kuroda, and Hirai have ever lent their incredible skill to. It's a masterclass in execution of themes and pacing, and it still packs just as strong a punch as Kazuma, even these 20 years on.